the weather affected Brock Purdy today. Like, there's no denying that, right? And it affected their offense.
You want to dive into that, because that was a little alarming, right? Because the one thing, obviously, immediately look up his hand size. He has the same hand size as Jimmy Garoppolo, who I would say is not a great cold weather quarterback. But like Jimmy, you went, well, this is not. It's not like, well, he played at San Diego State, right? Derek's knock. It's like, well, he played in Oakland, played in Vegas, and grew up in Bakersfield, played indoor in Texas, and went to Fresno State. Like, he's just not. That's Jared Goff, same thing. This guy went to Iowa State, and I would imagine all their spring practices and half their games get pretty shitty. And obviously the offseason practice in the winter. Like, he has thrown balls and been in awful weather. I would imagine Ames, Iowa, for people listening to this podcast, myself included, never been. That weather has to be fucking miserable 6 months a year, don't you think?
Yes.
I mean, miserable. Cold, wet, snow, everything. And he looked much closer to like an LA kid for the first time playing, because it was pretty alarming. And Olsen even hit it. Like, I don't think he can grip it. On the one pass to Kittle, which would have been a hard play even if he threw a great ball, when he first threw it, it just felt like they were off timing. And then Olsen said as they were coming back from the replay, like, I think this ball slipped on him. And it was clear it did. Like, he couldn't.
He died.
That was. Now, the Niners play at Levi Stadium. They're lucky. It's not a devastating thing if he can't, but it is something to keep an eye on. Small hands. He's got 9 inch and a quarter, which I texted a buddy, like, what? That's on the small end, obviously. That 9 is technically really small. People getting hit. He thought on average it would be well over in the NFL, like close to 9 3/4 would be average, and then obviously 10 and above, or you feel good about. But there's a reason we talk about it, right? That is, and it came to fruition today with him. I mean, the one where he was going like this that's why it gets talked about in the scouting combine.
Yeah, I mean, the ball that slipped out of his hand, to me, like, that just happens to guys. It's, you're going to have to make throws in this weather, and several balls were just not. What's funny, though, is they had the rain game at home last year, and he threw the ball, I thought, better in that game.
I wanted the rain, the cold, the combination
the
of
cold, the crowd, the whole thing, like, and I made some notes. We can go through some of the good throws he made, and late he made some good ones. Missed Ayuk. He dotted Ayuk early in the game down the middle of the field, and Brandon just missed it, just hit his hands. I mean, it was
he kind of got smoked on that, didn't he? He was getting pressure.
Brock got two guys right in his face, and he threw it 40 yards on a dime. So, I don't know if that means he wears.
Felt like the rain came though stronger.
It did.
More
it did feel that way
after the first couple drives.
It did feel that way. He was also getting a lot of pressure. I think to your point, like, there's a lot going on. He doesn't have McCaffrey. He doesn't have. Mostly didn't have McCaffrey. Didn't have Debo at all. And we hadn't seen him in that spot. Like, I think, and you think, he's a really good player. Today doesn't really change much for me, because I'm not going to ride that. Like, let's just watch the whole thing play out. But this idea, and I've been saying this to you for weeks, that, like, people like the conference, I don't want to hear it anymore. He's proven it. Like, no, he's barely played. He's barely played with a deficit in the fourth quarter, let alone on the road and in the rain. And guess what? Here's the good news. He's going to get another opportunity to do it. He's going to get another fourth quarter in a tie game in the rain. It's going to happen again. That's the way it works. Good quarterbacks play more bad games than bad quarterbacks. Bad quarterbacks get DNPs. So whatever. But yeah, he missed multiple throws, and it felt like the weather was a factor. And you know what? That's where the Eagles, like, we'll talk about it, but that's where home field advantage matters. Right? That's where the Super Bowl gets played indoors. That matters. So, but you just don't get through a season without playing games like this. You can't avoid it. You don't win championships without playing games like this.
Two things can be true. He's been excellent this year. He's had an excellent start to his career. It couldn't have gone much better. It really couldn't. I think historically, it's like unprecedented. But today, if you watched a couple weeks ago when Lamar played them, now it might have been somewhat chilly, but it was definitely a sunny day. There was no rain. He was like, hey, motherfuckers, I'm the best player on this field, and he dominated the first half. And they went up 21-3. I would say P.J. Walker's better than DTR, like more functional. They definitely can pass better. Not even close, actually. So it's different, but he kind of set the tone early. It was like, I'm going to be like an NBA player, because I am. And I think sometimes that's where the conversation of he can't, and part of it, I hate being critical of the offense because it really works, and no offense had been better through the first however many 5 games of the season than the 49ers. But it is very specific, right? And it's like, okay, we got to pass a little now, but all they can do, or a huge part of their pass game, is the boot stuff. It's like, well, can we just go like even if Debo's out, when Christian McCaffrey was still in, you can put him in the slot, you put Jennings, like you got a lot of versatile pieces. You can put Kittle in the slot, you can put Jennings and Ayuk out wide. Like they just don't really do that. That's not really their thing.
It felt like a lot of their pass plays got blown up because of the rollout, and all of a sudden Brock's under pressure. Back-to-back series with a grounding is a pretty young quarterback thing to have happen, right?
But it's like they're running him right into the guy. Like,
I know.
In fairness to him, what's he supposed to do? He's getting killed because the boot stuff, which Stefanski historically has run, so their players know how to do it. It's like when you do it against the Eagles, you do it against the Jets. They start seeing these things in practice. This isn't hitting these guys off guard. That I just sometimes like. Maybe it's the Andy Reid in me. Let's just go 4 wide, put him in the shotgun. I would imagine if we go to some Iowa State tape, he played the fucking Big 12. I'm not saying you rely on that or scrap your offense, but today felt like a game is like, guys, your run game's not working, so the play action shit they're unfazed by. Like it's the pass game. I thought Kyle kind of got worked. Right now, he's missed one of his best players goes out early. McCaffrey clearly banged up, so he's got some limitations, but he just gets when it doesn't work, and this used to happen, like this was much more of a Jimmy Garoppolo game, and they won a lot of these games with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they lost a lot of these games.
You texted me that early in the game. You're like, this feels like, this got Jimmy vibes to this game.
It can be frustrating with the Kyle offense when it's not really working. It's like, God, you got anything else? Like he sticks to the same kind of, and it works the overwhelming majority of the time. Like he'll just like,
and it works overtime. Like that's part of it, right? It's like over 4 quarters, it will work, right? That's
he's
part
like,
of the deal.
He's just hitting you with a bunch of kidney shots, and eventually by like the 9th round, you're like, holy fuck. But the Browns are like, keep hitting me in the kidney, dog. Like I don't care. We do not care. And one thing you say about
the game went on, it felt like.
Who was that?
Their defense, the Browns' defense.
Oh my God. The crowd, I thought that game was, for an NFL standard, had like a collegiate vibe of like, this place kind of lit right now. Didn't it feel like
the NFL needs
edgy?
The Browns being just relevant is pretty awesome because of their crowd.
Yeah,
they're like they're like a Jets. They're like a Lions. Like a Raiders, right? Like,
well I think the Raiders, the Coliseum, the Niners at the Candlestick. And listen, I've never been to their stadium. It's clearly a little newer than those, but it did feel a little old school NFL, less sweetie, and I could be wrong, but it felt like it had an NFL 80s, 90s edge to the place.
Yeah.
Which I miss, and their team played like that. Say this for Purdy. The one thing you feel really good about, because no quarterback can start many games in the NFL and be like a puss, right? Some are just tougher than others. Their willingness to like sit in there, be unfazed. Like some guys will just get rid of the ball really fast. It's not that they're not, like they're tough relative to American standards, but relative to quarterbacks, there are clearly different tiers. His toughness, you feel really, really good about it, right?
Yeah, mental and physical.
Yeah, I mean that last drive, which, they got, I don't want to say lucky, they got a penalty that kind of bailed them out early. I think they were like on 3rd and 10 or whatever. It was a holding or PI or whatever, but. And listen, like this is a game, like the refs were terrible, but 100% it's not like the refs lost the Niners the game. They were just all over the map.
Yeah, like a bunch of things went wrong for them, and if like one of those things goes right for them, they might win the game, right? If the Gibson penalty is not a penalty, they might win that game. But you still have several plays that come after that. You still got the ball back. You still drove down the field. You still had a field goal to win it. So, going undefeated is hard. And if you're going to lose a game, like that's probably what if that's how it has to look for you to lose a game, then you're probably a 13 or 14 win team if that's what it takes to beat you, and a defense that's as advertised.
I probably uttered this over the last couple of weeks. I probably be very unlikely, not impossible, but very unlikely that we see a 17-0 NFL team ever, with the salary cap, with how difficult it is. It's just
Yeah.
injuries now, the way how many just teams. I mean, every team. I watched the Eagles. Lane Johnson fucking could barely walk off the field. It's just maybe there weren't as many injuries somehow back when we were kids, but it feels very unlikely that we ever see 17-0. Turf, for sure.
Yeah. The schedules, right? Like, it used to be teams played every Sunday and some of them played on a Monday. But now, like
Thursday night games,
London games, Frankfurt games. You know, what if one year some team's 12-0 and they're like going to play the Jags in London and the Jags have been there for 3 weeks? That's a disadvantage, right? That's what happened to the Bills last week.
Lot going on, for sure.
I mean, I just saw the ad today. It's like the Frankfurt games coming up November 5th and 12th. I'm like, what?
They're playing multiple games in Germany?
Multiple games. This morning I woke up, there was a game. You know?
I know. You just, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, the Ravens are up 10.
It's always the Titans or the Ravens. It's always like a game where I'm like, yeah, I don't mind that being the 6 a.m. game, the team.
The NFL has games from 6 a.m. and it stops at 8:30 at night. I mean, they go for 14 hours of NFL football games.
And then when you wake up
14.
Monday, they set you up for another one. Yeah. So the Purdy grade, what would be your I got a few throws I want to get through here. What would be your Purdy grade today? Stat line for those who didn't look, 12 to 27. That's 44%. PJ Walker becomes, I saw this stat, the first quarterback to beat Brock since Caleb Williams. Did it as a freshman at Oklahoma. 44%, 125, a touchdown, and an interception. QB rating, we don't talk about it a lot unless it's 55.3, which was what his was today. 3 sacks.
I'd go C- because, I mean, that stretch where he couldn't grip the ball is like, if you can't grip the ball in a rainy game on the road, like, how are you going to play in the game? Like, it was very, very difficult for them to function in the passing game when he couldn't make passes. That's a problem. Now, it gets back to what we said earlier. They are lucky that geographically they just limit themselves on those opportunities. Their division games, the only team that would be Seattle, and depending on the schedule, like, you just may not end up there that time of year. But now you could argue Seattle can be raining September 1st or January 1st. But the other 2 divisional games won't happen, and then obviously your home games, for the most part, are going to be relatively good weather games. But it's just part of it's something we will talk about now, like, depending on the schedule on a given year. Oh, you're going to so-and-so in December or November. I mean, he could not grip the fucking ball.
Feels like you're grading him on a curve. C- feels generous for a 44%. You're saying it was rainy, it was on the road, you played the Browns. Felt like a D.
I mean, if I brought home a C- on my report card as a kid, I would get lit up. I mean, D's were like the kids that were just like, you're going nowhere in my home.
I'm just saying, like, C- when you complete 44% of your passes. If I just tallied it in my brain, I'd probably go like 4 turnover worthy throws. I mean, 2 guys he just threw 2 like the Newsom pick, or the pick he threw was just hit him in the chest behind.
Okay, maybe is it just, did he just fail today? Is it just an
F? I'm not trying to talk you into it. To me, here would be the argument for a C.
C- to me is an awful grade. Maybe I'm just too generous.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what I'm
saying.
High
standards from Jeff Middlekoff in the Middlekoff home.
Big Jeff. I was going to go D. I mean, you could argue C. The drive he put together at the end of the game, like, you know, I thought for all the bad throws, and there were several, I thought some pressure throws, like early in the game, first quarter, Burford gets the 10-yard penalty. And I just, in the moment, I was like, this feels like pressure. Like, the crowd's getting loud. You're on your own 34. It's 3rd and 13. He drops back, 2 dudes in his face. Throws it from his own 25 to the opposite 36. It's 40 air yards to IU. Just bam. It was a really good throw. He had the throw late on 2nd and 21 to Ayuk on the sideline. That was a really good throw right after a grounding play. To me, like, he in some moments, he has shown this in like moments where it feels like it's about the Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche did get him several times today, but he made them throws after it felt like, you know, there was going to be another Avalanche. I
appreciate
throws, but back-to-back groundings. Hard to have to me, a passing grade with back-to-back groundings of 44%.
I do appreciate a grounding when you're just engulfed by a guy who outweighs you by 60 pounds, who could outlift you by 500 pounds, who's about to slam you into the ground. and you just do everything possible just to throw it into no man's land.
I'll tell you.
And the entire other sideline starts going like this, starts pointing like no one's there. And the one guy's like, Kittle's like, no, George, you don't get credit for that.
The worst grounding is you were out of the tackle box, but the ball doesn't get back to the line. That's the worst type of grounding because your arm looks so bad when you can't get the ball back to the line of scrimmage.
I have to go back and look at the exact plays, but I'm pretty sure one of them was one of the boot things. Like when you do that, Kyle's plays do run you right into the guy when they don't go down the line of scrimmage. If the guy does not go down the line of scrimmage thinking like, I'm going to get a TFL as the backside defensive end, your quarterback is a sitting duck. And unless he's, I would say like Lamar Jackson or like strong enough like Jalen Hurts to break the tackle, every guy is fucked in that situation, like NFL history, right? Like Michael Vick, Lamar, there's a short list of guys that can juke the guy out. But the overwhelming majority of quarterbacks, that includes like Mahomes, are just going to get taken out by talented defensive ends. Now, some stiff guys might swing and miss, but a team like Cleveland, like they weren't missing an open field tackle on the quarterback when they're 3 feet away. Their closing speed, their physicality, and I think they kind of started feeling themselves like we're better than this offense right now, especially when McCaffrey and Debo's nowhere in sight and Trent's limping around. It was tough. I mean, it's a tough environment. That's an elite defense, and the Niners got shoved around a little bit, which is fine. I mean, they've been shoving people around for 5 games. And sometimes, like, luckily in the NFL, unlike college, your margin for error is much bigger. Like, you're allowed to lose like 4 or 5. Now, the number 1 seed, like, obviously the Eagles lost today too, but Google the Lions' schedule. I mean, the Lions might be closer to a 14-win team than 12 or 11. So I think there are multiple teams. They have not played the Bears, the Vikings. They still play the Raiders, the Broncos. The Lions are going to win a lot of games, guy. You're looking at me crazy, but I'm
just
their
laughing.
Their schedule's a joke.
I'm a hater, and I think you're probably right.
But just in a week, let's say the Niners beat the Vikings. They do just play Joe Burrow. Like who the Lions got that week. They get the Broncos or the Raiders. So it is just a lot easier game. Like I don't care if the Bengals are down. You still got to beat Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like those guys are, dominant players these last couple of years, even if their team's not quite the same. Even I watched that game against Seattle. Like Seattle was pretty terrible in the red zone, but I just
that's just not. I know this
was just more difficult.
It's not a place you want to end up on the road, right? Ford Field in the playoffs.
Well, the other thing is like the Niners haven't played the Ravens yet. Like that's just Lamar Jackson's not an easy guy to play. Meanwhile, they're playing fucking 17 on the Bears because Justin Fields broke his hand. Like that's who the Lions get. That's my point. The Eagles and the Niners have hard schedules. They just do. And the Lions do not at all. And a huge reason is their division. The toughest game on their schedule, they won week 1. And then probably just given it's hard to win in Green It won that game too.
Yeah.
The Lions have a very good chance of going 6-0 in their division, and the rest of their schedule is relatively easy. It sounds crazy, but after you see a game like today, you're like, God,